The housing terminal on Arcturus Ring-12 flickered, as if mocking Ethan Vale's desperation. He refreshed the listings again, even though he knew nothing cheaper would magically appear. His remaining balance, 902 credits, glowed accusingly on his wrist pad. That was supposed to last him 3 months. Maybe 4 if he ate nothing but nutrient bars and pretended showers were optional. The station's gravity hummed through the metal floor, a gentle vibration he normally found comforting. Today it felt like a countdown. If he didn't find a room before 20. 0, he'd start his new engineering apprenticeship homeless, sleeping in a corridor like an off-shift dockhand. Good first impression. He swiped again. Rooms unavailable, rooms above budget, rooms shared with 5 drummers. He didn't even want to think about that one. Then a listing popped up so suddenly he thought it was a glitch. Room available, private, 350 credits monthly. Sector C91. Contact, Lysera, that was impossible. A room that cheap on Arcturus Ring always meant 3 things: mold, murder, or malfunctioning life support. Ethan opened the details. Nothing alarming, clean space, private bath, high-speed net, shared kitchen, quiet preferred. It looked perfect, too perfect. Before he could talk himself out of it, his thumb hit request viewing. The reply came in 6 seconds, 19:30. Unit C91, do not be late, do not be late. Weird phrasing. But he didn't have the luxury to be picky. Sector C91 was older, quiet dim, with corridors that smelled faintly of sterilized metal, and something floral the ventilation system never fully filtered out. Ethan found the unit, paused, adjusted the strap of his tool bag, and tried to look less like a man one rent payment away from collapse. He pressed the door chime. The door slid open with a whisper, and Ethan forgot how to breathe. The woman standing there looked like she had stepped out of a myth, tall, impossibly elegant, with skin that shimmered faintly like diluted starlight. Her hair, a cascade of moon-white strands, fell down her back in disciplined precision. Her ears were long, tapering to delicate points that twitched almost imperceptibly as she observed him. Her eyes, silver with a faint glow, fixed on him without blinking. Not human, not remotely human. He recognized the species a second too late. Astraeli. A high-ranking, long-lived, telepath-adjacent race known for their intellect and emotionless poise, also known for scaring the hell out of anyone who wasn't used to them. "You are Ethan Vale," she said, not asked, stated. Her voice was smooth and low like polished glass sliding over metal. "Yes," Ethan managed. "You're Lysera." "I am." She stepped aside. "Enter." He obeyed mostly because his legs decided for him. The apartment interior was immaculate, minimalist. Clean lines, pale colors that softened the glow from the viewport. It smelled faintly of ozone and something cool and crisp, like winter air trapped inside recycled oxygen. "This would be your room." She gestured with graceful economy. Astraeli had a way of moving that implied they avoided wasted motion on principle. He peeked inside, a proper desk. Shelves, a bed that didn't look like it had survived 3 student generations, a window view of the station's inner gardens. It was perfect. Alarmingly perfect. He turned back to Lysera and found her watching him with unreadable intensity. "You are wondering why the price is unusually low," she said. Ethan swallowed. "Little bit, yeah. Most avoid living with my kind. No emotion. Just fact, our presence causes discomfort." Her silver eyes lowered slightly, the alien equivalent of a sigh. "I prefer quiet, order, predictability. Most humans do not." Ethan hesitated. He felt the weight of her words, not sadness exactly, but an ancient tiredness he didn't understand. "I don't really mind quiet," he said softly. She blinked once. For an Astraeli, that was practically shock. "Then the room is yours," she said, "if you wish it." Ethan's heart thumped. Hard. Ethan's first morning in Unit C91 began with silence, perfect, absolute silence. Not the normal kind where someone is simply quiet, but the kind that felt engineered, as if the entire apartment breathed in measured intervals. He lay still for a moment listening. Nothing, no footsteps, no humming appliances, not even the soft thrum of the recycler unit. Astraeli were known for graceful movement, but this was something else. He wondered if Lysera even slept. His wristpad chimed with his shift reminder. 07:0. First day at the engineering apprenticeship. He needed to start strong, preferably without thinking about how he now lived with an alien who looked like she could read his browsing history just by standing near him. He stepped into the kitchen, expecting to find the usual morning chaos he'd grown used to from past roommates. Instead, spotless, organized, as if a magazine photographer had staged the place 5 minutes before he woke. A teacup sat on the counter, empty, perfectly positioned, with a faint silver mark where Lysera's fingers had touched it. Her room door was closed, the panel light dim. He made a quiet breakfast, careful not to touch anything unnecessarily, and left. Arcturus Ring's engineering sector was a hive of metal walkways, neon lights, and human frustration. Ethan's supervisor barely glanced at him before tossing him a datapad full of tasks. "Fix the coolant relay on shaft G," the man grunted. "If it explodes, try not to be standing on it." Great, exactly the encouragement he needed. By 15. 0, Ethan had grease on his face, a cut on his knuckle, and 3 separate bruises from bumping into machinery that didn't believe in personal space. But the work felt good, solid, logical, mechanical. Machines made sense. Machines didn't stare at you with silver eyes that saw too much. His shift ended early, and he headed back to the apartment with a bag of noodles and his one guilty pleasure. A 0G caramel drink he shouldn't have been buying on his budget. When the door slid open, he froze. Lysera was sitting at the dining table, not standing, not gliding silently through a corridor. Sitting, hands folded, posture perfect, expression unreadable, she looked at him like she'd been waiting. "Welcome back," she said. He tried not to choke on air. Hi." Her gaze lowered to the small paper bag in his hand. "Nutrient noodles. How did you—" The scent, a simple explanation, but coming from her, it felt like she'd said, "I tracked you across the station using quantum-level sensory precision." He cleared his throat. "Want some?" Her head tilted slightly. "A kind offer, but Astraeli do not consume human starches. They are inefficient." "Right, of course." She probably drank liquid light or something similarly mystical. He moved to the kitchen, put his meal down, and noticed a small folded note on the counter. His name written in perfect handwriting. "Package left outside your door. Moved to table for safety." Lie. He stared. "You, moved my delivery." "You left at 6:52, she said. "It arrived at 074. The corridor was busy. Risk of loss was high." "You didn't have to do that." Her eyes softened a fraction. "You live here now. You are under my protection." Ethan blinked hard. Protection. She seemed to realize something because her posture adjusted, shoulders relaxing by a nearly imperceptible degree. "Forgive the phrasing. Among my people, it is customary to watch over those who share one's living space. It is practical." "Oh, right, practical. Totally normal. Completely fine. Living with a stunning telepath-adjacent alien who casually promised protection like a royal decree." What could go wrong? He sat with his noodles. Lysera remained at the table, studying a datapad filled with symbols he couldn't decipher. "Long day?" she asked without looking up. "First day," he said. "Engineering work study. I fixed 3 coolant relays and only almost died once. That is an acceptable ratio." She glanced up. The faintest hint of amusement touched her eyes. "You have steady hands." Ethan nearly dropped his chopsticks. "What?" "I observed yesterday. When you unpacked your tools, your movements were precise, purposeful. Astraeli value such traits." Though, his face warmed. No one had ever complimented his hands before, not sober at least. "You are difficult to read," Lysera added. He laughed nervously. "You mean humans." "No, you." Her gaze held his for a moment too long. "You carry uncertainty, yet your actions do not follow it. It is curious." Before Ethan could form a response, her datapad chimed softly. She stood. "I must leave for my night cycle duties. You will be safe here." Safe, there it was again. She said the word like a promise carved into stone. Lysera paused at the door, looking almost hesitant. "If you require anything," she said, "you may knock, even if I appear to be resting." Sure, thanks." She inclined her head slightly, silver hair falling like liquid light. Then she disappeared into the corridor with silent, inhuman grace. Hours later, Ethan sat at his desk trying to focus on work. But the apartment felt different now. Warmer, not physically, emotionally. Like he wasn't entirely alone inside these walls. He didn't know if it was good. The crisis hit at 0, too. 11. Ethan jolted awake to the sharp, angry whine of a failing power module, the kind of sound every engineer recognized instantly. His desk lamp flickered, died, then sputtered back to life with a sickly, dim glow. The project he'd been working on before bed, a micro-thrust vector prototype, was vibrating, lights blinking in a pattern that could only mean one thing. Overload imminent. Oh, no, 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 why now? He scrambled across the room, bare feet sliding on the cool floor. His hands flew over the wiring, trying to disconnect the power line before. Pop! The smell of burning circuitry filled the room, sharp and metallic. The module smoked, then went dark. Ethan stared at the dead device, his heart sinking straight into the floor. Great. Perfect. He had a demonstration at 10:00. This project was half his grade. The parts shop wouldn't open for another 6 hours. He ran both hands through his hair, pacing. I'm doomed, completely doomed. He kept his voice low out of respect for Lysera. This was her rest cycle. The last thing he wanted was to disturb an Astraeli's sleep. They were famous for needing deep, uninterrupted restorative periods. But then, a soft sound, the faintest whisper of a door panel shifting. Ethan froze. Lysera stood in his doorway. Her presence was silent, like a shadow deciding to take shape. She wore dark, layered sleep garments that looked far more elegant than anything he owned. Her silver hair fell over one shoulder, slightly mussed from rest, a rare crack in her perfect composure. Her long ears angled forward, sensing the disturbance. Her eyes, dimmed from low light, glowed faintly as they met his. You are distressed. It wasn't a question. I didn't mean to wake you, Ethan whispered. Sorry, I know Astraeli sleep is important, and my project died, literally died, and it's due tomorrow, and I'm out of parts, and... Show me. He blinked. What? Lysera stepped into the room with a kind of grace that made even the air move differently. She crouched beside the smoking device, studying it without touching. Micro-thrust vector prototype, she murmured. Human design, inefficient thermal shielding, poor life cycle tolerance. Ethan winced. Yeah, I noticed. Her eyes lifted to meet his directly. Step back. He obeyed without thinking. Lysera extended one hand, hovering it above the burnt module. For a moment, Ethan thought she was doing something telepathic, some Astraeli in her sight technique. But then she reached into the sleeve of her garment and withdrew a small, transparent case. Inside, components arranged with meticulous care. She selected a regulator, sleek silver, clearly not human-made, and held it out to him. This will work. Ethan stared. That's an Astraeli-grade regulator, are you sure? That's expensive, like very expensive. Lysera remained completely calm. I have spares. We use them in diagnostic stabilizers. Your device is compatible. But you are under my protection, she said simply. It is my responsibility. There it was again, protection, said like something ancient. Binding as if she truly meant it. Ethan swallowed hard and took the component. Her fingers brushed his. Cool, steady, precise. A jolt, not romantic, not electric, something else, ran through him. A sense of contact, like she could feel his anxiety through the touch. He quickly installed the regulator, hands trembling. The device hummed to life. Lights glowed emerald. The thruster responded flawlessly. It works, Ethan whispered. Lysera, I don't even know what to say. Then say nothing. She rose smoothly to standing. Ethan followed her movement, unable to look away. Lysera's expression was calm, but her eyes held warmth he had never seen before, something almost protective, maybe even proud. You handled the repair well, she said. Your steadiness is real, not chance. Ethan laughed under his breath. I was shaking like a meteor in turbulence. Externally, yes, she said, but your internal cadence remained controlled. My what? Astraeli sensed stress by listening to shifts in breathing, heartbeat, and micromuscle patterns. She paused. Even asleep, I felt the change. You felt I was stressed. She did not look away. I feel when those close to me are in distress. Ethan's pulse stumbled, close. Lysera blinked once, slow, deliberate. You share my space, she said softly. That is closeness by Astraeli measure. He didn't know what to say to that. His chest felt unexpectedly warm, dangerously warm. Lysera turned toward the doorway. If another crisis occurs at this hour, she said, you may wake me. I prefer honesty to needless suffering. Are you sure? Ethan asked. I don't want to interrupt your rest cycle. I do not sleep as deeply as humans assume. And, she hesitated. Lysera never hesitated. You become loud when stressed. Oh God, was I that loud? Yes, she said plainly. It was alarming. I considered the possibility you were being attacked. By my project. Her lips moved, not quite a smile, but close. Astraeli do not rule out unlikely threats. He rubbed his face. I'll try to be quieter next time. She raised an eyebrow barely. You will fail, but I appreciate the sentiment. She turned, silver hair shimmering in the dim light. Just before stepping through the door, she paused. Ethan. Yeah, your project is excellent. Your design shows intuition. Continue with confidence. He froze. You really think so? I do not speak without purpose. Then she disappeared behind her door, leaving Ethan alone with a Ethan learned something new during the third week at Unit C-91. You could tell when Lysera was home. Not by sound. She moved like air shifting between shadows. Not by scent. Astraeli scent markers were subtle, crisp, almost clinical. Not by vibration. She tread so lightly the floor hardly registered her weight, but by atmosphere. The same apartment, the same walls, the same recycled air, yet it felt occupied in a way nothing human could replicate. A gentle tightening of space, a heightened awareness. Like someone had drawn an invisible line through the air and balanced the world on it. Tonight, at 49 hours, that sensation filled the apartment. Lysera was home early. Ethan stepped out of his room, stretching from hours of studying propulsion models, and found her standing in the kitchen. Not sitting, not stalking, standing, motionless, as if calibrating her posture with geometric precision. Steam curled from a cup of dark Astraeli herbal infusion. Her hair was pulled back in a formal knot, but there was something off. She looked tired. Astraeli never looked tired. "How was your shift?" he asked. Lysera didn't look up immediately. When she did, her silver eyes carried a weight he couldn't identify. "Unproductive," she said. "My supervising instructor remains uncomfortable with my presence in the blood analysis wing." Ethan frowned. "Because you're Astraeli. Because I have the capacity to sense changes in biological fields," she said evenly. "Human staff consider this a threat." "That's ridiculous. You're literally top of your class." "Second," she corrected automatically, but the correction lacked its usual crisp neutrality. "And competence does not dismantle fear." Ethan leaned against the counter, abandoning his protein bar halfway unwrapped. "You're working alone again." "Yes, that's really unfair." Lysera's gaze flickered, a tiny fracture of emotion showing beneath the surface. "It is customary," she said quietly. "Astraeli history encourages distrust." "Your history isn't you." "Many disagree." Ethan's jaw tightened. He had seen the way people reacted to her in the corridors. The way they stepped aside, pressed themselves to the wall. Some stared, some avoided eye contact entirely. It wasn't subtle. "Does it bother you?" he asked softly. Lysera tilted her head. "I am accustomed to caution, but dislike is inefficient. People are idiots." A tiny, almost imperceptible curve touched the corner of her lips. Not quite a smile, but warmer than anything he'd seen from her all day. "Humans," she said, "are creative with their irrationality." He snorted. "That's one way to put it." Lysera set her cup down with deliberate precision. Her movements were impeccable, and yet the exhaustion remained in her eyes. "I do not fault them," she murmured. "Fear is ancient, deeply encoded in species memory. It is not easily eroded." "Still doesn't make it fair." "Fairness is not a universal value," she said. Ethan stared at her for a long moment. Then something in him shifted, small but definite. "Lysera, you've been nothing but respectful to me. You saved my project, helped me settle in, kept the place spotless, moved my packages inside, and you've never once made me feel unsafe." He paused. "Honestly, you're a better roommate than any human I've lived with." Lysera blinked slowly, a gesture of surprise. "I do not seek comparison." "Well, too bad you're winning." A faint exhale left her. Astraeli laughter was nearly silent, but he recognized the subtle twitch of her ears, the closest thing to amusement. "My last roommate," Ethan continued, "left raw protein bars under his bed until they fused with the floor. Before him, I had a guy who microwaved fish at 3 in the morning. And once, there was this girl who borrowed my tools to fix her boots and accidentally welded them shut." Lysera's expression softened delicately. "That is impressively unfortunate." "Oh, I haven't even started. One guy used my soldering torch to toast bread." Her eyes widened by a fraction. "That is a misuse of tools." "Finally, someone who understands." Lysera picked up her cup again, her posture easing slightly. The rigid lines of her shoulders softened. A little of the tension in her aura dissipated. "You are different from other humans," she said quietly. Ethan hesitated. "Different how?" "You do not avoid me." Her voice was low, almost unsure. "You do not shrink or look away or assume intentions." He shifted uncomfortably under her gaze. "Why would I avoid you?" "Because of what I am." "That's not a reason." "It is for many." Ethan took a step closer, subtle, respectful, but deliberate. He rested a hand lightly on the counter between them. "Lysera, I'm here because you gave me a chance. You offered me a home when I had nowhere else. You didn't have to." You barely knew me. Her long ears angled slightly back, an Astraeli sign of emotional vulnerability. I offered because it was logical, she said. Maybe, he replied gently, but you still chose me. Lysera studied him for a moment that felt stretched thin with meaning. Finally, she said, your presence has altered the equilibrium of this space. A pause, in a way I do not dislike. Ethan swallowed, pulse thudding unexpectedly in his throat. Yeah, same here. For a long moment the apartment felt still, balanced between two breaths. Then Lysera's wristpad chimed softly. I must prepare for my next cycle, she said, though her voice was softer now. But thank you. For what? For treating me as, her words faltered, caught on something fragile, as something other than a symbol of fear. Ethan gave her a small, sincere smile. You're Lysera, that's enough. She turned away only slightly, but he caught the faintest shimmer in her eyes, a subtle shift of light that might have been emotion. Astraeli never showed emotion, except maybe when they trusted someone. As she walked toward her room, she paused at the doorway. Ethan. Yeah, you may continue your work tonight. Your typing no longer disrupts my rest cycle. A tiny pause. I have adapted. He laughed softly. I'll still try to keep it quiet. You will fail, she said gently, but I will not mind. She disappeared behind her door, leaving Ethan with a strange, warm pressure in his chest, an anchor he hadn't expected. He returned to his room, sat at his desk, and stared at his project. He wasn't just living. The knock came at the worst possible time. Ethan was buried under an avalanche of circuit diagrams, half-finished calibrations, and a mug of synth coffee strong enough to burn through hull plating. His 9. Project review loomed like a predator in the dark. He was already stressed, jittery, half-convinced the universe was about to critique his entire existence. So when the apartment door chimed at 15, 34 hours, he didn't move at first. Maybe if he stayed perfectly still, whoever it was would disappear. The chime sounded again, and again. Ethan groaned, shoved his mug aside, and dragged himself to the door. He opened it, and immediately wished he hadn't. His parents stood there, perfectly timed, perfectly panicked, perfectly uninvited. His father wore his space station formal outfit, which somehow looked both overprepared and not prepared at all. His mother clutched a travel bag to her chest like it might save her from environmental failure. Ethan, she gasped, pulling him into a hug. You're thin. Are you eating? How is the gravity? Does it feel different? Are the systems safe? It's 09 standard, Mom. It's fine. She brushed at his hair like he was still 12. You look pale. He always looks pale, his father said, stepping inside and eyeing the apartment with suspicion. This place seems dangerous. Are the structural seals intact? Yes, Dad, they're intact. His mother was already inspecting the kitchen. This is much nicer than your last dorm. How much is the rent? 400. Both parents froze. 400. His father repeated, what's wrong with the unit? Nothing's wrong. Is it near the reactor core? Are the oxygen scrubbers faulty? Is there mold? Are your neighbors criminals? No, and probably not, Ethan said, guiding them away from the cupboards. I just got lucky. You never get lucky with housing, his father muttered darkly. This is suspicious. Before Ethan could invent a believable lie, the soft, nearly soundless shift of a door behind him made his blood run cold. No, not now, not when his parents were in peak anxious mode. He turned slowly. Lysera stood in her doorway. She had clearly just awakened from her rest cycle. Hair slightly undone, eyes dimmed from low light, long ears angled forward in curiosity. She wore an Astraeli indoor garment, dark, layered, seamless, something that made her look even taller, even more inhumanly elegant. Ethan's mother went pale, his father tensed like he was facing down an apex predator. Lysera stepped forward, silent, composed, absolutely unreadable. Greetings, she said with perfect calm. I am Lysera, Ethan's roommate. Ethan's mother made a faint noise. Not quite a scream, not quite a gasp. Something in between. His father moved instinctively, positioning himself between Ethan and Lysera in a protective stance Ethan found both insulting and borderline absurd. This is an Astraeli, his father whispered. Ethan, you're living with one of them. Lysera's expression remained a flawless diplomatic mask. I have no intention of causing you distress, she said gently. His mother shook her head, voice barely steady. This isn't safe. Ethan, pack your things. We'll find you another place. Mom, you cannot live with an Astraeli. It's inappropriate and dangerous. Mom, stop. His father lowered his voice, as if Lysera couldn't hear every vibrational frequency in a 10-meter radius. Son, they have emotional resonance abilities. You can't trust them. Their history. Her history is medical school, Ethan snapped. Night shifts, helping people. Fixing my project at 2 in the morning, leaving notes about package deliveries. She's never been anything but respectful. Lysera's ears angled subtly backward, Astraeli for emotional discomfort. But her posture didn't change. I apologize if my presence causes unease, she said quietly. I can help Ethan locate other housing if you prefer. No, Ethan said sharply. Both parents stared at him. Ethan took a breath. Lysera is my friend. Lysera's eyes flickered, silver deepening for a moment as if the light inside them warmed. His mother looked horrified. Ethan, you don't understand. No, Ethan repeated, voice steady. You don't understand. She has been nothing but kind to me. No one else wanted to live with her because of what she is, not who she is. His father frowned. That distinction isn't. It is, Ethan said firmly, and I'm not moving out. A long, heavy silence followed. Lysera finally bowed her head. I will leave you to your family, she said softly. There is no hostility between us. I wish only peace in this space. She moved back toward her room, silent, controlled. But Ethan saw it. A faint crack in her composure, a quiet hurt in her eyes. Something inside him tightened painfully. After 47 exhausting minutes of arguments, pleas, and guilt-laced speeches, his parents eventually left, reluctant, shaken, and still unconvinced. When the door closed behind them, Ethan sagged against it, exhaling like he'd been underwater. Silence. The apartment felt still again. He walked to Lysera's door and knocked gently. Lysera, they're gone. A long pause, too long. Then the door slid open. Lysera stood there fully composed again, hair immaculate, face serene, eyes unreadable. You do not need to apologize for their fear, she said. It is logical. My presence is statistically unsettling to many humans. It's prejudice, Ethan said. Fear isn't always logical. Lysera looked away, not with shame, but with something older, heavier. I can assist you in finding a safer arrangement, she offered quietly. One that does not create conflict with your family. Ethan shook his head. I'm not leaving. Lysera's eyes returned to his, searching. He stepped closer. You are my friend, he said again, deliberately. That matters more than their fear. Something fragile, delicate, impossible shifted in her expression. Like a star dimmed by centuries, suddenly flickering back to life for a second. Friend, she repeated softly. The syllable sounded new on her tongue, rare, precious. Then I will honor that bond. Ethan exhaled in relief. Lysera turned slightly, silver light catching her profile. You defended me, she murmured. To your family. Of course I did. Her long ears lifted, Astraeli surprise. No one has ever done that, she admitted. In all my years beyond my home cluster, no one. Ethan's chest tightened. Well, he said gently, then they're overdue. Lysera's gaze held his for a long moment. Soft, warm, unshielded. Then barely audible, she said, Thank you, Ethan Vale, for seeing me. A warmth spread through him, dangerous, unfamiliar, impossibly grounding. He smiled. I see you, Lysera. She stepped back, but not before a faint, genuine expression touched her lips, something small and fleeting, a real smile. Barely there, but real. He went to his room afterward, but his hands shook too much to work, because suddenly the apartment didn't feel like a place he lived in. Ethan spent the next week pretending everything was normal. It was, not even close. Lysera moved through the apartment with her usual silent grace, but something was different now. Not in her routines, those remained precise, elegant, almost ritualistic. No, what changed was the air around her, softer, less guarded, a little warmer when she looked at him. She didn't avoid him anymore. She didn't maintain the perfect, professional distance she had when he first moved in. Instead, she lingered. When he brewed coffee, she stayed nearby, just close enough that he could hear the faint rustle of her garment. When she returned from her night cycle, she paused a little longer in the doorway before retreating to her room. When he worked at his desk late at night, she walked slower in the hall so the sound of her passing was unmistakably for his benefit, as if announcing, I am here. Ethan wasn't sure what any of it meant, but he felt it, a gravity, a pull, something forming quietly between them. The moment that changed, everything happened on a quiet evening. Ethan was adjusting a calibration on his thruster model when he noticed the apartment's environmental settings shift, a subtle cooling of the air, the signature of Astraeli presence. Lysera was home. He stepped into the living area and froze. She was sitting on the floor, Lysera never sat on the floor. Astraeli posture was famously perfect, their movements deliberate. But tonight she sat with her knees drawn slightly inward, hands resting in her lap, silver eyes dimmer than usual. Her long ears drooped at an angle he had never seen, like a creature conserving heat. She looked small. Not physically, she could never be small, but emotionally. Ethan approached slowly. Lysera. She lifted her head. Her expression remained composed, but her aura, usually sharp and crystalline, felt muted, fragile. I have returned early, she said quietly. Are you hurt? No, you look off. Lysera blinked, off. I mean something's wrong. A beat of silence, then your perception has grown. Ethan sat across from her, careful to give space. What happened? She hesitated. That alone worried him. In my rotation, she said, the senior instructor requested I avoid the biological diagnostics wing entirely. A human intern expressed concern. What kind of concern? That my presence altered her emotional field, Lysera murmured. That I was influencing her, that she could not focus near me. Ethan's jaw clenched. That's ridiculous. Lysera's gaze lowered. Astrally sensitivity is often misunderstood. It breeds fear. That doesn't make it fair. No, she said softly, it does not. She drew a quiet breath, a sign of tension in her kind. For many years, Lysera continued, I have accepted this pattern. Distance is efficient, detachment is protective. She paused, but recently detachment has become difficult. Ethan's chest tightened, slow, careful. Because of me. He asked. Lysera didn't answer immediately, but her long ears dipped slightly, betraying emotion. You defended me, she said. You spoke against fear. You saw me. Something warm and quiet unfurled inside Ethan. Lysera, he said gently, anyone with eyes can see who you really are. Not anyone, she whispered. Silence stretched between them, deep, still, threaded with something delicate. Then Lysera shifted, her voice barely above breath. Ethan Vale, may I ask you something? Anything. Her silver eyes lifted, luminous even in the dim light. When you look at me, what do you see? He didn't expect the question, not from someone so composed, not from someone so controlled, not from someone who hid herself behind centuries of discipline. Ethan swallowed. I see someone strong, intelligent, precise, someone who works harder than anyone else just to be treated fairly. Someone who tries so much to make others comfortable that you forget your own comfort. She stared at him, unmoving. And I see someone, Ethan continued, voice steady, who deserves to be seen for who she is, not what people are afraid of. Lysera exhaled, shaky, a sound he'd never heard from her, her eyes softened, liquid silver. Your words affect me. How? They resonate, a pause deeply. Ethan's heart stumbled. Is that dangerous? For me, she whispered, yes. Their gazes held too long, too close. Then Lysera looked away abruptly, as if pulling herself back from a precipice. Ethan, she said, voice low, astrally form bonds differently from humans. Our connections are intense. Difficult to sever, we do not bond lightly. What are you saying? She closed her eyes for a brief moment. I am saying you alter my equilibrium. Her voice trembled barely, and that is something I have not allowed in many years. Ethan felt something impossible press against his ribs, fear, awe, longing, all tangled together. Lysera, he said softly, you alter mine too. She opened her eyes slowly, as if bracing for impact. And for the first time, an unmistakable expression appeared in her gaze. Vulnerability. Ethan Vale, she whispered. I do not know if this path is wise. Probably not, he admitted. Your species is impulsive. Usually. And I am not. He smiled faintly. No, you're careful, deliberate, strong. Lysera's long ears twitched, flushed with faint inner light. Yet, she said, I do not wish to retreat. Ethan exhaled, then don't. Silence again, but not like before. This silence had weight, warm, gravitational. Lysera shifted closer, not touching, but near enough that he could feel the cool aura of her presence. Her voice lowered to a near whisper. Ethan, may I attempt a resonance? His breath caught. What does that mean? It is harmless, she said. A brief alignment of emotional fields, a way to understand one another. A pause, a way to trust. He nodded slowly. Okay, if you want to. Lysera lifted one hand, hesitant, elegant, almost trembling. Her fingers brushed the back of his. A soft glow pulsed through her skin, silver light, faint and shimmering, and Ethan felt it. A warmth, not physical but emotional. A quiet, steady connection, not overwhelming, not invasive, just honest. Lysera inhaled sharply, long ears lifting, eyes widening. You, she whispered, your field is gentle. Ethan swallowed. Is that good? It is unexpected. A pause. And welcome. The glow faded. She withdrew her hand slowly, almost reluctantly. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Lysera rose gracefully, studying him with an expression he had never seen, soft, unguarded, almost tender. Ethan Vale, she said quietly, you have altered my path. Is that allowed? Nothing forbids it. Her voice warmed slightly, but it is rare. She stepped back toward her room, pausing at the doorway. Good night, she said softly. And thank you.